Welcome back to This Mindful Life. I'm Michelle Marshall. I've been thinking a lot in the last week or two about self-sabotage because it really is something that plays into or comes up, I should say, a lot in my life. And I think it's pretty common, especially when we are trying to change habits or ways of being that have not been good for us for whatever period of time in our life. But for me, I have found a lot of times self-sabotage shows itself in self-doubt. And self-doubt, like negative self-talk, that is so loud. It's like it's screaming inside and it drowns everything else out. Like, you can't do it. Look, you're not as good as that person. They're so much further along than you. I mean, comparing is the worst possible thing we can do when we're trying to do something. It gets us absolutely nowhere, right? It literally gets us nowhere. Here's an example. This is where all this is coming from. And I was debating whether or not I wanted to bring this up because, I'm like, I'm doing this thing. It's a little more personal, but sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be all that personal, but, I'm committed here. So I recently did a meditation teacher training. I'm already a meditation teacher, but, just like everything else that you learn, it's always good to kind of do continuing it. So I did a meditation teacher training that was given locally here in Dallas for 5 days. And the first night, it was a shorter day. We did a 1 hour silent Vipassana meditation. And I can actually say, I don't know that I've ever done one solid hour. I think the most maybe I've ever done is 45 minutes. And so it was a bit of a stretch for me, stretching past that. And the instruction going into the meditation was, don't move. Don't make a sound. Don't move. Okay. I didn't move. I could, get in 20 minutes. I could generally tell if I'm, once I hit the 30-minute mark, I can generally tell in my body what that feels like. And once I hit 45 minutes, I definitely knew, okay, I've hit my limit. I've not gone past 45 minutes anymore. And then, in all of the self-talk coming up around that, like, oh, when is this going to end? Oh, my foot is falling asleep, but I'm not supposed to move. And of course I'd like wiggled my toes a couple of times because the tingling was what I thought was too much. And in the meditation, I don't talk a whole lot about my experience in my meditations just because it's very personal and sometimes it's hard to communicate. But in this meditation, really was one of those sort of experiences where everything sort of dissolves away. And not to sound too woo-woo, you really feel kind of like the universe opens up inside of you and you lose sort of all sense of your boundaries. And that it was very much that kind of experience. And then coming out of it when the meditation was over and just feeling like not wanting to be out of it. It's a very strange sensation. And this kind of thing kept happening over and over again throughout the training, where I was coming up against things that were coming up for me in my meditations, where I felt like I have already dealt with this. I've already worked through this so many times in my life. And I was getting really angry, feeling like none of the work I have done has amounted to anything because it's still coming up. I'm still dealing with same things. And then going into the days after the training, feeling really bad about myself and sort of beating myself up over it. like, look, you thought you had made progress, and look, you hadn't done anything, and maybe you shouldn't even be a teacher anymore, and just stop. And this talk, right, this self-doubt that turns into making me give up on things. That's what I mean when I talk about self-sabotage. The internal dialogue that it's like it begins to see that we are changing something, that we are having some success in working in a way that is changing a habit that we don't want to have anymore, changing a way of being, something in our lives that's not serving us. And it's like this other thing inside of us recognizes that. Oh, look, who does she? Oh, I don't think so. We're not going to let her do that. No, 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 no. Let's throw some self doubt in there. Let's lay it on really thick, to the point that it becomes abusive. Like, who do you think you are? You haven't learned anything. You don't know anything. I don't know why you think that you have anything to say to anybody. Look at all of the progress you haven't made because you're still coming back to this. And so that voice of doubt, that thing, that voice, that negative voice inside of you that keeps telling you, that keeps not even really, well, yeah, it's telling you all these negative things. It's putting all this doubt in your mind. It's making you really, hard on yourself and really feel bad about yourself to the point where you finally just give up, right? Because that internal dialogue is so uncomfortable and you just can't listen to it anymore. You can't get rid of it. You're trying not to listen to it. You're trying to push it to the side. All that does, of course, is make it stronger because it wants to be heard. It wants attention. It wants something to be done. I used to have this visualization of this voice as the little golem from Lord of the Rings. Because that's what it felt like, that not when it was all big-eyed and kind of sweet looking and almost cute, but when it turned into the really creepy gross teeth and whatever. And I would visualize it that way and talk to it inside and be like, hey, I see you there and I know what you're trying to do right now. Yep, I know. You are not going to talk me down. You're not going to talk me back from this. And this is the experience I had in the last couple of weeks. It's really gotten me thinking a lot about self-sabotage and how in the past I would just cave to it. I would give into it because I felt shame. I felt shame around how dare I try to be bigger than what I have been conditioned to be. The internalization that I've taken on. How dare I try to be more than that? So there was shame around it. And I've done it so many times it made me give up on myself. But what I realized, the conclusion I came to this time was, I can continue that pattern of something gets hard or I circle back around because these, so many of these things, these habits and things that we try to break out of ourselves are so deeply ingrained that it's, like one go with it is not going to, make it go away. So we come back to it, right, in some way. So that would always make me give up so easily. And I realize now that, yes, there's discomfort there. Yes, the self-doubt is coming up. But as Brene Brown says, that the great thing about middle age is you become clairvoyant because you've already been here before. You know how it's going to end. So looking back over the past, when I have given up on myself, when I have said, oh, it's too hard, or I feel too uncomfortable, or, I don't know what to do, and, I'm not good enough or whatever, that has never ended well for me. Because giving up, it did release some of that tension and that discomfort and that pain in the short term, but it created more in the long term. And it strengthened my internal golem, right? It proved it right. The only way to prove that wrong is to push through it. is to recognize that, okay, yes, I'm feeling this way. If I give into it, I will self sabotage, and it will create exactly the conditions and the situation that I fear that will happen because I feel like I'm not good enough for something. I hope all of this has made sense. So I wanted to present this idea of really thinking about how we self-sabotage when we're trying to make a change, when we're trying to grow in some way, whether it be in our internal life, which is where most of mine comes, or where it's in our careers, it's in our relationships, if it's in our friendships. But there's, to really look at that, where we typically, historically, or maybe even in the current moment, are in the middle of self sabotage or tempting it, right? Or thinking about walking down that road. So I wanted to bring that up, bring that into consciousness. How do we self sabotage? Are you doing it now? How have you done it in the past? Has it worked out for you? Do you recognize when you start to do it? So thanks for listening, and I'd love for your input. I'd love for you to tell me about if this subject resonates with you, if you've had any experience with this yourself, you know, tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Thanks again for listening.